The message wasn't meant for humans. It wasn't even meant for anyone outside the distant Polari cluster, a corner of the galaxy thought to be peaceful for millennia. But when the signal cut through the void, twisting ancient frequencies and screaming across every relay station between stars, it brushed Earth's outer monitoring arrays, and humanity answered. Not because they understood the words, not because they owed the alien queen anything, but because the cry was unmistakable, a call for help. Captain Mara Vance sat in the war room of the Aegis Dawn, the flagship of Earth's Special Forces Division, as the translated transmission repeated for the 100th time. To any who hear, the Queen falls. The shatter's warm devours our worlds. Our blades break. Our shields melt. Help us, or we are lost. The translation system struggled with the nuances, but the pain, the desperation, the raw terror, those needed no translation. Admiral Reyes, grizzled and sharp-eyed, looked around the table at the gathering of Earth's finest. Veterans, champions, legends. Volunteers only, he said. This isn't a rescue mission. This is a fight for survival. Not ours, theirs. Whoever goes may not come back. Mara was the first to stand. Behind her rose Kane, the cybernetic powerhouse. Celine, master sniper and tactician. And Reese, whose fists once shattered a Jovian war drone in close combat. Soon they all stood. Not because it was their duty, 'cause it was who they were. The Aegis Dawn surged through hyperspace, its hull humming with barely contained force. It wasn't alone. Smaller warships, sleek, brutal, fast, followed in its wake. Humanity had seen many wars. Against machines, against plagues, against themselves. They had learned one lesson above all others. When someone cries out for help, you bring everything you have. The Polari cluster, once a glittering sprawl of vibrant worlds, loomed ahead. But instead of beacons of life, the fleet saw only dying stars and fractured planets. Orbiting the last remaining Polari stronghold was a horror straight out of nightmares. The Shatter's Swarm. Vast clouds of bioengineered parasites swirled like malevolent storms, devouring ships, stone, flesh, everything. Aboard the Aegis Dawn, Mara's jaw tightened. Punch a hole through their lines, she ordered. Get us to the surface. The ships peeled into attack formation. Human weaponry, designed to destroy asteroid cities and continental fortresses, spoke in fire and fury. Beams lanced out, cutting swathes through the swarm. Missiles exploded with brilliant suns, leaving gaps wide enough for the drop pods to punch through. And down they went, straight into hell. The capital city of Velrith had once been beautiful. Sweeping crystal towers, bridges of woven light, plazas full of flowering vines. Now it was a smoking ruin. The Polari, once proud and radiant, fought like cornered animals. Their soldiers, tall, iridescent beings with armor fused to their skin, were battered and desperate. At the heart of it all stood the Queen, Queen Silirave. Her once regal form was bent with exhaustion, her silver crown cracked. She wielded a weapon that looked as much art as death, lashing out at the endless swarm of grotesque insectal creatures. Mara's boots slammed into the broken marble as she landed, her team at her back. Kane tore through the first wave of the Shatterswarm with a plasma axe, laughing grimly. Celine's rifle barked, each shot a death sentence. Reese waded into the melee with nothing but armored gauntlets and raw rage. Mara herself drew twin pistols, each shot perfectly placed. The Polari soldiers stared, stunned, as the humans cut a bloody path straight to their queen. Who? The queen gasped, barely able to stand. Friends, Mara said, reaching out a hand. The queen hesitated, but only for a moment. She took it. The humans helped fortify the inner palace, buying precious time. In between the endless waves of attackers, Selira explained. The Shatter's Worm wasn't a natural enemy. It was a weapon, unleashed by an ancient enemy of the Polari, a forgotten empire seeking revenge after a lost war centuries ago. They had engineered the swarm to be unstoppable, to consume, to adapt, to learn. And now, we have nothing left, Selira said, her voice heavy with guilt. I sent the call not expecting an answer. I only wanted to be heard before the end. You were heard, Mara said fiercely. And we're not here to die. We're here to win. But how? Selira whispered. Even your strength will not be enough. Mara smiled grimly. You don't know humans very well. The plan was madness. Exactly the kind of madness humanity excelled at. While Kane and Celine worked with Polari engineers to modify the palace's ancient shield generators, Mara and Reese led the defenders in hit-and-run attacks, drawing swarm forces into traps. Selira, despite her injuries, refused to hide behind walls. She fought beside them, her royal armor glowing with renewed fire. They believe we are broken, she said to Mara between battles. They think despair is enough to defeat us. Mara chuckled. They're about to learn why that's a mistake. When the final assault came, it was a tidal wave. Hundreds of thousands of Shatter's Worm beasts, twisted beyond recognition, poured into the ruined city. The palace shields, supercharged by human ingenuity, flared to life, creating a massive dome of pure force. Inside the dome, the defenders prepared for the end. Or so the swarm thought. As the creatures battered at the barrier, screaming and clawing, Mara activated the final piece of the plan. Hidden deep beneath the palace was an ancient Polari weapon, never used, too dangerous. A gravitational imploder. It would collapse the surrounding terrain into a singularity, pulling everything in, including the Shatter's Worm. It will destroy the city, Selira warned. And you with it. Mara just grinned. That's why we brought dropships. The humans had rigged fast extraction vehicles, shielded and nimble, ready to swoop in and lift everyone out at the last moment. It wasn't a perfect plan, but perfection was for people who expected to live forever. Mara keyed the detonator. The ground shook. Reality itself began to tear as the imploder fired. The shield dome collapsed inward, not in failure but by design, sucking the swarm creatures into a churning vortex of oblivion. Selira, her eyes wide, clutched Mara's arm as the dropships howled overhead. Now! Mara shouted. The defenders sprinted for the ships as the city crumbled around them. Kane caught a falling Polari child with one hand and threw him into a waiting drop pod. Celine picked off enemies trying to cut them off. Reese bodily hurled 2 wounded soldiers onto the ramp. Mara and Selira leapt last, the blast wave nearly catching them as the dropship screamed into the sky. Below them, the swarm vanished into nothingness. And the ancient city of Velrith was no more. But its people lived. Later, aboard the Aegis Dawn, the survivors gathered. The Polari Queen stood tall once more, though her eyes shimmered with grief for what had been lost. You could have left us to die, she said, addressing the human warriors. Many would have. Mara, bruised and bloodied but alive, shrugged. We don't ignore calls for help, she said simply. Not ever. Selira approached her, bowing low, a gesture of profound respect among her people. You did more than save my life, she said. You saved my soul. She straightened, meeting Mara's gaze.